As I hope is immediately apparent, I'm a man. I was christened in the Church of England. I'm South African. I have British nationality. I'm an immigrant. I'm married. I am a father. I'm homosexual. My homosexuality is the only aspect of my identity that is in constant conflict with all the others. I have come out to you. Since it was first proposed in the late 19th century by Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, coming out, this kind of performative self-disclosure, has been framed as an act of emancipation. Because of its relation to the self, and because of the self's ability to shape the individual experience of his or her own life, homosexuality has been described as a significant personal, social, and political drama of the 20th century. I realized that I was homosexual in 1965, at the age of 4. It was my first sleepover at a friend's house, and in the middle of the night I woke, suddenly aware that I was not in my own bed. I walked down the dark corridor, and my friend's father came out of his bedroom, naked except for his pajamas, to see what the noise was. As I looked up at him, I realized that in some unknown way, connected to what he represented, I was other. This was the defining moment of my life. Given their fetishized position as idols of masculinity in white South Africa, it is ironic that it was the sight of a bare-chested provincial rugby player that made me realize that I was different in this way. There were no role models available for boys and girls like me, only caricatures. It was not until 1977, when I was 16, that I met a man who made it clear to me that he was also homosexual, even though he had a wife and a child. I did not meet an open lesbian woman until 1981. I was not uncomfortable with my homosexuality as an adolescent, but I realized that it needed to be kept a secret. The South Africa of my childhood was ruled by a people, a folk, shaped by their Calvinist Dutch inheritance. The historian Simon Sharma, describing the Dutch national character of the 17th century, says it was forged by the tension between being rich and being moral, combined with a sense of being God's chosen people. In South Africa, the Afrikaans National Project expressed this specialness as a result of a pact between the folk and God, faith in return for power. It is hard to convey the texture of the society in which I grew up. Its violence is a matter of record, but I cannot adequately conjure its special quality of paranoia and its pervasive, violent patriarchy. I was educated in a small suburban government school of 400 people, teaching, as was required, Christian nationalist education, christelijke nationale onderwijs. 5 years ago, I learned that my class teacher, when I was 14 in 1976, was a police spy. Perhaps his name should have been a clue. It was De Wet. In apartheid South Africa, sex was a particularly policed boundary, a focus being the prohibition of marriage and sexual contact between white people and black people or colored people across the bar. Homosexuality, whether across the color bar or not, was illegal, a common law offense, or so-called unnatural sexual offense, inherited from Roman Dutch law. Sex between men was punishable by up to 7 years in a common criminal jail. Lesbianism was not legislated against, but this did not imply permission. It was more than likely an expression of a patriarchal view that only sex involving a penis is real sex. Although I kept my homosexuality to myself, avoiding the company of other people who might also be perceived to be homosexual, my peers, with the unerring instinct of children, bullied me violently on the grounds of my perceived girliness and my avoidance of said rugby field. In 1978, the year before I left school, the male prefects, students with limited but very real authority over other students, called me to a meeting in which they informed me collectively that my physical manner suggested that I was a moffy, a derogatory term equivalent, I suppose, to faggot, and that this was going to get me into trouble. This was not advice. This was a threat. At the end of 1979, I left home, and like many homosexual men and women before me, for hundreds, perhaps for thousands of years, I moved to the city, with its anonymity, its concentration of people, and in other words, its opportunity to escape. In 1980, in Cape Town, I lost my virginity, but found a culture and an identity. I discovered that while homosexual is something I am, being gay is something that I do. It is a sensibility, a mode of perception, of appropriation, of subversion, of the repurposing of mainstream heterosexual culture. It is a subjective cultural practice. This is elegantly described by Gertrude Stein in a short story from the 20s, in which the word gay, in the sense in which I am using it, is commonly held to have appeared in print for the first time. Helen Furr had quite a pleasant voice, a voice worth cultivating. She did not mind working. She worked to cultivate her voice. She did not find it gay living in the same place where she had always been living. She went to a place where some were cultivating something, voices and other things needing cultivating. She met Georgine Skene there, who was cultivating her voice, which some thought was quite a pleasant voice. Helen Furr and Georgine Skene lived together then. Georgine Skene liked traveling. Helen Furr did not care about traveling. She liked to stay in one place and be gay there. They were together then, and they traveled to another place and stayed there and were gay there. I was taught to be gay, to cultivate my voice, by a small group of older, more experienced, sophisticated men, for whom I carry to this day a respect bordering on reverence. They did more than free me from fear and shame, although they did that too. They taught me the history of my kind. They helped me to understand that biology aside, gender is a performance. Masculinity and femininity are constructs. They educated me and they shaped me, and they helped me to make all the many choices gay men and women have to make about how they will perform their identity to a heterosexual world. In 1981, I came out to my friends. In 1983, I came out to my parents. My mother said, "Do you think you might be going mad?" and burst into tears before rushing from the room. Those were pretty much the last words she said to me for the next 20 years. When we were alone, there was a long silence, and then my father cleared his throat and he said, "So, are you the boy or the girl?" I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, "I don't understand what you mean." Somewhat shakily, he said, "Well, do you give him flowers or does he give you flowers?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Sometimes," I said, "I give him flowers, and sometimes he gives me flowers." There was a long pause. He said, "I need a drink," and left the room. Although she wouldn't talk to me, my mother took to sending me clippings from newspapers about the growing AIDS epidemic. That same year, in 1983, an architect in my circle threw himself off Table Mountain because he was HIV positive. The rescue services refused to pick up his remains for 3 weeks. He was the first man I knew to die in the epidemic. In 1985, I was deported from South Africa to Britain for refusing to go to the army. If I had not held a British passport, I might have spent another 7 years in a criminal jail, along with homosexuals serving the same term. Kafferbutties and moffies, nigger lovers and faggots, criminals together. In London in 1986, I fell in love, lastingly, wildly, comfortingly, deeply, totally, and gratefully. We made out in a cemetery in the shadow of an Anglican church. In 1987, we got married. It was an informal marriage conducted by one of our friends because it was, of course, illegal. This was Thatcher's Britain, the Britain of the shadow of the gay disease, a Britain in which Thatcher claimed to the Conservative Party that children who need to be taught traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay. In London in April 1988, we joined more than 300,000 people demonstrating against the passing of Section 28 of the Local Government Act, which legislated against, and I quote, the so-called promotion of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretend family relationship. My husband and I marched with a group of Dutch men who sang at the top of their voices, "We are gay, we are Dutch, and we like it very much." Perhaps this is one of the reasons we moved here in 1998. In 1996, South Africa became the first country in the world to enshrine gay and lesbian rights in the Constitution. In 1999, my husband and I began the process of becoming accredited as parents fit to adopt. My mother told me she hoped she would be dead before we got a child. In 2001, Article 1.30 of the marriage law in the Netherlands was amended to provide that a marriage can be contracted by two people of different or the same sex, thus becoming the first country in the world to introduce marriage equality into law. And 2 years later, in 2003, the British government finally repealed Section 29 of the Local Government Act of 1988. On June the 9th, 2007, on the 20th anniversary of our illegal wedding, my husband and I were legally married in the town hall of the city of Amsterdam. Our son's mother was one of the witnesses, as was the female friend who had married us all those years ago in London. My mother refused to come, but my father did, and as the registrar declared my husband and I married, he jumped up and kissed us both. One of our unmarried Dutch heterosexual friends wrote that she was proud that the first wedding her young sons had been to was between two men. But our decision to get married was not uncontested. Some of our feminist women friends, heterosexual and lesbian, argued that marriage is a vehicle of patriarchal oppression. The second group, gay men and women, objected that marriage is a heterosexual institution and that gay people should not seek to ape heterosexual cultural custom and that marriage is a form of oppression through normalization. Oh, and my mother-in-law refused to come because of her strongly held Christian belief that marriage is for men and women before God and that homosexuality is a sin. So why did we get married? Our marriage had nothing to do with God. We got married because we love each other, and that love has lasted more than half of our lifetimes. We got married because we could, and because we should be able to if we want to. We did not get married because we felt that our first informal, illegal marriage was, as one of my friends once referred to it, not a proper marriage. On the contrary, since it was entirely free of imposed formal content, it was entirely proper in the sense of being appropriate to our needs, and it has served us well. We did not get married because we wanted to heterosexualize our relationship. We were not interested in adopting heterosexual norms, nor were we trying to stress how like the dominant majority we are. We are homosexual, and more than that, we are culturally gay, and we live both inside and outside a heterosexual world. Our marriage is not a heterosexual marriage. We did not get married to prove that we are like you. No disrespect, but I really don't want to be like you, any more than you want to be like me. We got married because we believe in marriage. That is to say, we believe that above the commitment two individuals may make to each other, there is a commitment to the idea of the two of us as a couple, a commitment worth making publicly in the presence of our friends and the community of which we are part, and in the eyes of the law. And we got married because we wanted to go on record as publicly as possible as existing. We got married because we want to change marriage forever. We got married because we insist on the same rights as you. We are not interested in civil partnership, in special categories of gay marriage. We got married because in this country there is full marriage equality. We got married because our legal union poses dilemmas of citizenship, immigration, parenthood, and opens up the need for and the possibility of change in these areas. We want to change marriage because we insist on changing society. Our marriage is the thin end of a wedge. We want to change society so that laws like that currently tabled in Uganda, which will see a sentence of life imprisonment imposed on homosexual men and women, will disappear from the face of this earth forever. That night in 1965, when I stepped into the darkened corridor, I did not imagine any of this. I am gay. I am not Dutch, but I love you very much.